Nice to be here in summer, you know? We had breakfast here at the table every day. It was a beautiful week. Did a little bit of hiking up on the mountain.
800,000 people watched this man in silence. No commentary, no drama, just stone walls, mountain air, and the slow sound of work. Somewhere between the crackling wood stove and the fog over the Italian Alps, most of them start to believe they are watching something pure. A man who walked away from modern life and built something real.
I had a full-time job. I lived in the city, freelanced after that, but I had quite a regular life.
But here is what the framing never shows you. Behind the solar panels and the meditative edits, behind the weekly uploads and the 100-year-old cabin, there is a story more layered and more revealing than anything the thumbnail prepares you for. The truth behind Martijn Doolaard's off-grid life is not that it's fake. It is that it is far more deliberate than it looks. Who he was before the mountain. Martijn Doolaard did not arrive at an Italian alpine hillside by accident. He arrived there after 10 years of building a life that he then deliberately took apart. He was born in 1983 in the south of the Netherlands, raised in a family. Nursery surrounded by land and outdoor work. He studied graphic design, graduated in 2006, and went on to work as a professional designer at studios in the Netherlands, Singapore, and New York. He bought an apartment in Amsterdam at 27. By any standard measure, he was a successful creative professional living a conventional European urban life.
So you're originally from Amsterdam, right?
South of the Netherlands. Yeah, I've moved around the Netherlands a few times, and I ended up in Amsterdam about 13 years ago.
Nice.
What broke it open was the bicycle. Between 2016 and 2019, Martijn completed 2 of the longest solo cycling expeditions on record, Amsterdam to Singapore, then Vancouver to Patagonia, documenting both journeys in photographs, writing, and eventually 2 books published by Gestalten, 4 years on the road, alone, crossing continents. But here's what most people don't realize about those expeditions. They weren't the story. They were the setup. Because somewhere on one of those roads, camped in an extraordinary place for a single night, altitude and silence and the particular weight of temporary beauty, something shifted in how he understood what he actually wanted. He kept asking the same question, not, where am I going next, but what would it feel like to stay? Not to pass through a place and photograph it and move on, to actually stay, to wake up in the same spot 2 weeks in a row, to know the mountain above the tree line by name and know what it looks like when the light changes in the afternoon. To put roots into something instead of rolling wheels across it. That question followed him off the bike and into a Barcelona apartment in 2020, and it eventually led him to a real estate listing for 2 stone cabins in the Italian Alps. 27,000 euros and a mountain. The property was on the north-facing slopes just south of Turin, near the French border. 2 small historic stone cabins on approximately 6 acres of land, a meadow below them, mountain views in every direction.
It's on the top of this hill at 1,200 meters in Val Pellice, which is west from Turin, about 2 hours from Turin, quite close to the French border. Quite a lot of land, 2.3 hectares, which is almost 6 acres, I believe. So it's these 2 stone cabins, or they're more like barns, dating from 1903, which is very old.
The price, 27,000 euros. That's basically the cost of a small garage in Amsterdam, he said at the time. He bought it. He kept his Amsterdam apartment, a detail worth noting, and he drove to the Alps with a tent, a sleeping bag, and a set of second-hand solar panels he had pre-configured so he could have electricity from the moment he arrived. Power tools, laptop, a wood-burning stove, a bottle of propane for cooking, a phone to use as a hotspot. And get this, before the cabin had walls that kept out the cold, before the pipes were connected, before there was anywhere to sleep except a tent pitched on the floor of an unfinished stone structure, he set up the camera. The first videos from the property appeared in 2021. He wasn't a YouTuber, he was a trained photographer and visual designer who pointed his camera at the work in front of him. Within a few months, he had more than 300,000 subscribers. The audience arrived before he had even fully committed to the idea of having one. That is not a coincidence. That is a man with professional visual communication skills. applying them to the most compelling subject he had ever had access to, his own life, in a place that looked like another world. What off-grid actually means here. Let's be precise about this, because the word off-grid is carrying a lot of weight it hasn't entirely earned. What Martijn Doolaard has built on that hillside is a carefully constructed hybrid, not a disconnection from modern life, but a redesign of his relationship with it. The solar panels run his lighting, his power tools, and his laptop. The property has running water from a mountain source. There is a vegetable garden. He drives 30 minutes to the nearest town once a week for supplies. Every week, without exception. He uses a mobile phone hotspot to connect to the internet. He continues to do remote graphic design work from the property. He is reachable. He is online. He is on a production schedule. The Italian government's heritage preservation laws impose an important constraint on the project because the cabins are classified as historic stone structures. He cannot build freely or expand the property beyond its original footprint. He is legally required to restore what is there, not construct what he wishes was there. In a strange way, the law enforces the aesthetic that his audience finds so compelling, because Martijn cannot modernize the property even if he wanted to. It's not that simple though, because partially self-sufficient doesn't fully describe what this is either. What Martijn has built involves real physical work, real isolation at real altitude.
Just walked up and down, you know, it's the car is about 50 meters away, 70 meters, and then I think it's 20 meters up the hill, but luckily it's all like carrying everything down is easier than up, so.
And real conditions that most of the people watching his videos would find extremely difficult. The hybrid nature of the arrangement doesn't make it soft, it makes it specific, and specificity is what the off-grid label tends to flatten. What the camera doesn't show. Here is the part that the meditative long takes and the mountain panoramas don't communicate. The early days at the property were genuinely hard. When he arrived, the stone structures were standing but full of gaps. Mountain wind coming through the walls like the walls weren't entirely there. He set up his tent inside one of the cabins and started working. That was the living arrangement. A tent inside a cabin with holes in it, in the Italian Alps, in a mountain winter. Before aesthetics, before a vegetable garden, before any of the visual grammar of slow living that would eventually define the channel, there was the question of fundamentals. How do you get water when the pipes have frozen? How do you get warm when the wood stove is the only heat source and you haven't yet figured out the chimney? How do you transport roofing materials up a mountain road that gets snowed in for weeks at a time? Basically, every system that urban life makes invisible, water, heat, electricity, food supply, road access, required active problem solving at the property. Every skill he didn't have, he learned from instructional videos and then applied by hand in real alpine conditions. Roofing, masonry, plumbing, drainage, foundation work, years of it performed seasonally because winter in the Alps does not allow for continuous construction progress. The schedule belongs to the mountain, not the builder. What the camera shows is beautiful. What the camera shows is real. But what the camera shows is a considered visual presentation of something that, in lived reality, involves cold mornings and frozen systems, and the specific frustration of a plan that works in theory until the first frost proves it doesn't. The larger cabin became a workshop and storage space. The smaller one gradually became livable. This process took not weeks, but years. The hard realities. Nobody frames correctly. There are things visible in Martijn's content that pass by without enough weight. He is alone. Not occasionally alone, genuinely, continuously, structurally alone. The nearest town is 30 minutes by car. His neighbors exist, but are not close.
I met the neighbor, he introduced himself. He's a guy from Austria, he lives there for 6 years, so he's just around the corner on the other side of the hilltop.
The silence that viewers experience as therapeutic while sitting in their living rooms is the same silence he inhabits every day for months, at a stretch, at altitude, often without anyone else on the property. Chosen solitude is still solitude. Road access is not guaranteed. Snow clearing is a task that must happen before any other task can happen. Getting a bag of cement, a length of pipe, or a replacement tool up a mountain road that has drifted overnight is a logistical problem that most of his audience has never had to solve. Winter shuts the work down, not metaphorically, literally. The weather determines what is possible. There are weeks in the alpine winter where construction stops, where the focus shifts to maintenance, heating, and waiting. Progress is measured in months. Setbacks are measured in seasons. And here's the catch that almost never gets named directly. The aesthetic of the content, the slow takes, the quiet soundtrack, the sense of purposeful isolation creates a viewing experience that is genuinely calming. But that experience and the lived reality are not the same thing. The gap between watching someone fix a stone wall in a beautiful mountain setting and actually fixing a stone wall in a mountain winter is not a small gap. It is the gap between a 45-minute YouTube episode and years of accumulated physical effort. It is the gap between watching someone haul roofing material up a hill and actually hauling roofing material up a hill. Between watching frozen pipes get thawed and being the person crouched in the cold doing the thawing. Every detail that reads as charming on screen costs something real off it. None of this is hidden. Martijn documents it. But the framing, the music, the landscape, the editorial choices makes the reality feel softer than it is. That softening is not dishonesty. It is craft. But understanding that the craft exists is part of understanding what you are actually watching. The truth that changes everything now. Here is the part of the story that reframes everything before it. Martijn Doolaard's off-grid life is a content business. Within a few months of posting his first videos from the property, he had over 300,000 subscribers. The channel continued to grow. It now stands above 800,000. After crossing that initial threshold, YouTube became, in his own direct words, his full-time job. It's now my work. I make a video every week. The channel uploads on a consistent schedule. The format has evolved from 15-minute updates to 45-minute to 1-hour documentary-style episodes. The production is professional. The editorial continuity across episodes is intentional. This is not casual documentation of a life. This is a television series about a life, produced on a weekly schedule by a trained visual communicator. What most people don't realize is what that means structurally. It means the wood stove and the chisel sounds and the frozen pipes and the alpine winters, all of it, is not just a life being lived. It is also content being produced. The mountain is the workspace. The renovation is the product.
I'm looking at how the connection is being made here. Over there it looks like it's a lead pipe coming from the beginning of the second house to here, which is 25 meters. So if it's a lead pipe until here, I'll probably replace the whole thing.
The 800,000 people watching every Sunday are the audience that makes the whole arrangement financially viable. Beyond YouTube, Martijn continues to do remote graphic design work via mobile hotspot. He sells photographic prints. He has 2 books with a major publisher. The income streams are multiple, and all of them depend on the same core asset: the documented life on the mountain, presented weekly with professional visual craft. And get this, he didn't escape the economy. He didn't opt out of the system. What he did was find a position within the economy where his office is a hillside in the Italian Alps, and his commute is walking out the cabin door. That is genuinely different from most people's lives. It is also genuinely a job. The crazy part is that this doesn't make the life less real. The cold is still cold. The work is still work. The isolation is still isolation. The 27,000 euros still changed everything. But the romantic image, the man on the mountain, beyond the reach of modern demands, slowing down to a human pace while the rest of us scramble, that image is incomplete. The man on the mountain is uploading every Sunday. He has a production schedule. He has an audience waiting. Why 800,000 people keep watching? To understand why this works at the scale it does, you have to understand something real about the people on the other side of the screen. Martijn's videos are slow, quiet, narration is minimal, sometimes absent entirely for stretches. The camera sits on a tripod and runs while a single task plays out in real time. Masonry work, bread baking, a walk through fog. The soundscape is the mountain, wind, birds, the specific sound of old tools on old stone. No jump cuts, no artificial tension, no countdown to a reveal. This is structurally opposite to nearly everything else on YouTube, And that opposition is the product. On a platform built around stimulation and engineered urgency, Martijn's content is a deliberate counter-movement, and his audience responds to it the way a person responds to silence after a sustained loud noise. They exhale. The comments on his videos read like collective decompression. People report using them to fall asleep, to decompress, to feel for 45 minutes that a different pace of life might be possible. Hands down, the most powerful thing about his content is not the renovation. It is the permission structure. His videos give viewers a window into a pace of life that feels more human than the one they are navigating daily, without judgment, without instruction, without telling the viewer that their own life is wrong. It is just a man, a mountain, and a task that takes as long as it takes. Nobody is telling you to quit your job. Nobody is selling you a course on how to replicate the lifestyle. Nobody is shouting at you about why you're doing it wrong. There is just the stone, the light, the sound of work being done slowly and well. That absence of pressure is, paradoxically, one of the most compelling forces on the platform. What most people don't realize is that this effect is not accidental. Martijn is a trained photographer and graphic designer.
I would try to also have my working life on the road. So I would bring my laptop and a hard disk and keep my freelance contacts warm so I could, when there was work to do, I would take a break.
The way his videos feel, the composition, the pacing, the relationship between sound and image, is the product of professional visual intelligence applied deliberately to a specific emotional goal. The calm is real. The mountain is real. And the calm has also been crafted. The life behind the lens. There is one more layer worth sitting with, because it changes the texture of everything you have just watched. Martijn Doolaard's philosophy, as he has stated it publicly, is that the slower he goes, the more he sees, and the more he experiences. That is a genuine conviction. It is visible in how he works, how he moves through the property, how he approaches a task that is going to take 4 hours when he could rush it into 2. The slowness is not performance. It is a practiced way of being in the world. But here's the catch. The man who lives by that philosophy uploads a video every single week. He maintains a production schedule. He has an audience of 800,000 people who have come to expect new content on a regular cadence. And a full-time job, even one conducted from the top of an Italian mountain, is still a full-time job. The stone cabin is 100 years old. The business model is about 10. That combination, old structure, new economy, may be exactly why it works. The viewers are not watching someone who has genuinely left the world they inhabit. They are watching someone who has found a way to stay in the world while appearing to leave it. And that appearance, that beautiful, slow, carefully crafted appearance of escape, is the most valuable thing he produces. Basically, that is the whole story. A man who wanted to stay in a beautiful place, who documented the staying, who turned the documentation into an income, who turned the income into the ability to keep staying, and who, in doing all of that, gave 800,000 people something they apparently needed very badly, proof, delivered weekly, that a different pace of life was possible. Whether that proof is entirely what it appears to be, whether the life behind the lens matches the life on the lens, whether the escape is as complete as the editing suggests, is a question only Martijn Doolaard can answer. The rest of us are watching from a distance, through a screen, on a platform that was specifically built to keep us watching, and that context is worth holding on to. The question the ending doesn't answer. So, what is actually true about Martijn Doolaard's off-grid life? He genuinely lives remotely. He genuinely purchased 2 historic stone cabins in the Italian Alps and has been restoring them with his own hands for years. He genuinely runs on solar power and mountain water and wood heat. He genuinely learned the skills from scratch, did the work himself, and endured the conditions that the work required. The isolation is real, the labor is real, the location is real. None of it is performance. What is often misread, he is not disconnected from modern society. He is not effortless or at peace at every hour. He is not surviving on the mountain. He is producing content on the mountain, on a professional schedule, for an audience of hundreds of thousands of people who return every Sunday for the next chapter. And he is doing it with the same discipline, consistency, and skill that any professional media operation requires. The mountain changes the backdrop. It does not change the deadline. And here's the question that doesn't resolve. The 800,000 people watching the wood stove crackle, watching the chisel work the stone, watching the fog roll in over the mountain at the end of another slow and quiet episode. What are they actually watching? Are they watching a man who found a better way to live? Or are they watching a man who figured out how to turn their longing for a better way to live into something he could deliver them every Sunday? Because both of those things can be true at the same time. And the fact that they are, that the escape and the business are the same thing, that the pastoral and the commercial are inseparable, that the most calming content on the platform is also a professionally produced weekly media product. That is the actual truth behind Martijn Doolaard's off-grid life. Not a fraud, not a saint. Something more interesting than either. A man who found the overlap between what he needed and what 800,000 people were hungry for, and built his life inside it. Whether that is genuine freedom or just a different kind of trap is a question the mountain doesn't answer. And the camera, as always, is running.